afternoon, and thank you very much for coming today. We have a full room here, and we do have an overflow. This means that we will take questions from the overflow. Mr. Pedde is the director of the Institute of Global Studies of Rome and the director of the magazine Geopolitics of the Middle East. He taught international relations at the University di Roma La Sapienza and at the John Cabot University of Rome. His field of research is the Middle East and the Persian Gulf, and he has authored a number of publications. It's the first time you're speaking at the Wilson Center. Or am I making a mistake?
No, it's the first
time. It's the first time, okay. And we are very happy to have you with us, and I hope this is the first of future cooperations with you. So you have the floor. Our speaker will speak as our usual format is for 30 minutes, and then we will open the floor to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here and really honored to be at the Wilson Center today, and I will be really glad, and I would like to thank for the invitation. And well, I would like to, in introducing the topic, I'd like to make a premise. I'm talking of personal interpretation of what I think it is, or it could be, the domestic political evolution of the Islamic Republic of Iran and its relations with the United States. And well, I probably will look at it through an European lens, or at least through a lens based on how we Europeans are looking at the evolution of these phenomena. Whereas the first consideration on my side is that most of the categories that we are using to interpret the domestic political evolution, it's, I don't want to say wrong, because it's not wrong, but probably it's not enough to understand a system which is completely different from most of the stereotypes that we have in the West, and especially in Europe. The idea of the Islamic Republic is very often based, at least in our own experience in Europe, on an interpretation, on a model which is linked to the revolutionary Iran of the late 70s, early 80s, and still this is difficult to detach from the reality of what's going on in these last years, in these last 35 years in Iran. Well, my personal idea is that the Islamic Republic of Iran, as we have known, is basically gone in 1989, 1990. So it's a completely different country, the one that we are dealing with today, and it's regulated by political, economic, and social logics, which are no longer the one which have produced just one of the actors that we are dealing with in Iran. So I don't want to create new categories, of course, but probably adding some new ways to interpret some of these phenomena. And well, in addition to reformist, conservative, radicals, ultra-radicals, and whatever, I think that it could be probably useful to consider that one of the main factors is this long generational transition, which is interesting in Iran in this moment. It's a process which started more or less less than 10 years ago. It's still ongoing. It will be affecting Iranian politics probably for the next decade. And so it will be a very long process where we will have a transition from those that we can label as the first generation, so basically those who emerged after the revolution, so who are the essence of the Islamic Republic because of the fact that they have created it from the first day. Most of these people is or was linked to a theocratical apparatus, And in my opinion, what is particular of this generation is that they have not replicated themselves. We don't have a second generation in the so-called combatant clerics. We don't have a generation, an emerging generation of people coming from the clerical system, able to emerge in political terms. There are just few figures, but not strong enough to be dominant in this sphere. And it's in looking at the way they are conceiving politics and society, in my opinion, one of the things which is characteristic of this first generation is that they are terribly scared of any idea of opening with the external world, and in particular with the West, and in particular with the United States. Any opening with the U.S., with the West more in general, is a sort of earthquake shaking the pillar, the ideological pillar of the Islamic Republic. And but on the other side, they are more pragmatic and say quiet on the issue of defense and security. I think that the mantra of this first generation had always been that of not crossing the red line. Not crossing the red line, which could provoke a conflict with the United States or with any major actor in the region. I think that they are sincerely against every possible development of the nuclear program, because this is producing a threat for Iran, for themselves. This is transforming Iran in a justifiable target. And so this is something which is considered extremely risky for the Islamic Republic, not only in the relations with the external world, but also at the domestic level, in order who controls the bomb, who controls this kind of machine. So this will create an earthquake also within the military apparatus for this. And on the other side, I think that the second generation, so basically those who came after the revolution, those who are the product of the war, of the more in general of the development of the Sipapas d'Aran, so those who have created their own alliances, their own political structure within the 8 years of the Iran-Iraq war. They are, first of all, they are not representing specifically the theocratical system. They are representing the revolutionary model, so the ideological structure of the Islamic Republic. They have been created around it. They are not there to defend the country, but to defend the Islamic revolutionary government, which is a quite strong difference with respect to the other armed forces and within the security apparatus. And this generation is less and less scared of talking with the West, talking with the others. They probably don't think that there is any risk in terms of contamination. They are not anymore, let's say, animated by the fear like Fardid of West toxications. I think that most of them even think that there could be a capacity of influencing the West. I think that Ahmadinejad demonstrated how he was genuinely thinking of being able to send a message to the West, to convince the West of the reasons of Iran, of how Iran has the capacity and the power of delivering, of achieving targets and results. So there is even an ambitions in terms of the way they could talk with the external world. And on the other side, in terms of security, I fear that this generation is much more skeptic than the previous one. Probably less pragmatic in considering the benefit of a strategic balance with the West. And what I'd like to quote one person once. I was speaking with a person in the security apparatus, and he was making an example, saying, look at the way Gaddafi was treated by the West. He was the one complying with all the requests. He was the one surrendering. He was the one stopping all the programs, and it took just a matter of seconds to be betrayed and hosted because of your interest in North Africa. And I think that this attitude is quite diffused in this generation. So the fact that in a way or the other there should be a way to deter the West. There should be a way to deter those who are challenging Iran. And a common factor in terms of security is probably that of considering Iran always under attack. So the perception of Iran that we have in the West of a proactive actor threatening the region, threatening the world, is probably the reversal on the domestic level. Iran thinks that they are under attack, and they have been always under attack. They are surrounded by enemies, by regional enemies, by global enemies, by interests which are playing against the Shia, against Iran, and against the Islamic Republic. And the events which followed the 9/11 proved Iran, from their own perspective, that this is right, that they were the real target, that they are the enemy of the West and of the allies of the West in the region. At least this is the reading they're officially giving. And if you look at some of the issues which are bringing us also to the relationship with the US, the crisis in Iraq and in Syria, the reading in Iran is that these are fabricated crises, that the Syrian crisis, it's not because of a domestic problem, it's an external aggression to the Syrian government, is an attempt to hit Iran at the heart of its security system in the region, so the system of the proxies. And the crisis was fabricated by mostly by the Saudis, and with the help of other Europeans and regional countries. And this is within a more wider context where the Iranians consider themselves as the victim of this sectarian world war started by the Saudis and alimented by others like the Emirates or some other members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. So the idea of being surrounded, the idea of being always under attack, the idea of being the victim of the system, I think is alimenting the vision of both generations. There is also, I think, a third generation that we can put in the basket, which is the one of those who are composing the vast majority of the Iranians, so the youngest generation, which is, however, not yet represented politically in the parliament, is not yet represented politically in terms of intelligentsia. It's very difficult for them to emerge, and I think it's interesting to follow civil society, the way they're evolving, but it's difficult to find an official position representing their own ambitions, their own desire for the future. So still no representation, but they are the bulk of the Iranian society. They are already the bulk of the Iranian society. And so we cannot ignore that there is this huge majority of people playing a role in the country. In general terms, so apart from these major distinctions, and I found that it's really difficult to categorize people like reformists, radicals, ultra-radicals, and conservative, because as far as my own experience, it's easy to find people which are sharing positions which are, at least for us, apparently contradictory. So people which are in the camp of the reformists, which are sharing positions which are supported by the ultra-radicals, for example, or vice versa. So that's why I think that probably we should add some other way to interpret the phenomenon, and in order also to understand how deep is the change within the Iranian society, how deep is the change within the internal apparatus. For example, look at the numbers in the election that promoted for example, when we had President Khatami elected twice, or even Rouhani, several votes was coming also from the so-called universe of the Pasdaran, which we have transformed into an unicum, which is representing the evil side of the country. This is something which is difficult to accept from inside, in my opinion. It's difficult to transform these apparatus into something monolithic, into something completely negative. And it's one of the components of the system. We cannot ignore them. And this is one of the problems we are facing in this moment. Iranian politics is made, and I can say as an Italian, because it's basically the same, by a zero-sum game. So this is one of the similarities, several, unfortunately, similarities that we have. But this form of politics is basically ignoring the counterpart. And this is one of the problems we are facing. The fact that this huge majority of people controlling the inner part of the system have been put in a difficult position by both the Rouhani's government and by the West. So they are the pariah of these negotiations, they are the pariah of these relations. And we cannot ignore that they are those running most of the security system, most of the administrative apparatus, most of the institutional system in Iran. So not involving, at least in part, this component will always face a reaction from the other side. So we will always have someone trying to block this process. And my personal feeling is that things are not going really very well, even domestically in Iran, in the sense that the opposition to this agreement is scaring a lot of people, and is scaring especially those who have benefited from these 35 years of isolation. The embargoes, the isolation, the sanctions and whatever had created real economic empires in Iran. And not only economic, there are circles of powers which have been alimented by this situation. And of course, most of those running this elitarian circle are scared of any hypothesis of changes and any hypothesis of rapprochement with the United States, any hypothesis of normalization with the external world. There is not only, of course, the military apparatus. When we refer to the Pasdaran, we usually tend to refer to the military apparatus of the Sepah Pasdaran, but it's just a portion of that apparatus. The Sepah Pasdaran evolved into a universe in these 35 years. They are controlling, or they are basically behind most of the institutions, most of the industries, the companies, the Boniad. There have been also an evolution, in my opinion, in the way the private the structure of the economy is cooperating with the institutions. It's no longer the age of the old bazaris supporting the government because of protecting their own interest in the bazaar or in the so-called parallel financial structure. The second generation of the bazaris is not involved anymore in that kind of business. They are more involved with foreign trade, with import-export, with real estate, which is booming in the country. So there are different interests. And if we look, for example, at these people, we can find these people both with the ultra-radicals and with the sharing also several of the position of the so-called reformists. So it's difficult to categorize this kind of people within a rigid structure within the Islamic Republic of Iran. In general terms, however, apart from this very conflictual and heterogeneous system, which is perceived in the West as a monolithic one, that's what I think was one of the biggest mistakes in reading Iran from outside. Reading Iran as a monolithic system which is cohesed around its institutions. I think that one of the problems is that of the coexistence of these two generations which are starting to collide. And so the interest of the second generation is starting posing a threat also to the interest of the first generation. That's why the figure of the leader became also so relevant in the recent years. And even with respect to the leader, I have to say that my personal opinion is that this idea of these charismatic figures, which is saying yes or no to every issue in Iran, is quite naive in the sense that the leader is a balancer of power. it's a political element which is trying to contain these emerging threats from the domestic system and from these clashes within the various generations. And I see him more as a weak political figure, in the sense that he is challenged by most of these groups of interest day by day, creating problems for the office of the leader rather than giving him the possibility of ruling the countries. And this is also, in my opinion, explaining why some of the decision of and of the position of the leader seems controversial from outside. And with this, I would like to come on the Iran-US relations. Let's start, for example, with an example. Why the leader was so negative in any hypothesis of cooperation with respect to the fight to ISIS. Of course, the logical reading from outside is that's a common goal, that's a common enemy, that's a common threat, so why not cooperating? Well, I think that on the ground is completely different. So what has been done on the ground, it's probably completely different from what has been said in political terms. But I think that we can easily understand the position of the leader in terms of defending the ideological structure of the government. It's difficult to accept the idea of a cooperation with the US, while on the other side, the agreement, the P5+1 dialogue is crumbling, or at least not producing the result which were expected in political terms domestically. So accepting the idea that we Iranians have been defeated with respect to the negotiation, but we will cooperate with the Americans, could be probably perceived in certain circles in Iran as a defeat. So whenever they ask something, we say yes, and wherever we ask something, they say no. And this is risky for the leader in order to maintain this equilibrium. Also because from the other side, the second generation and most of those around the Sepapas Iran are skeptical of this process, because what they perceive is a delegitimization of their own nature, their own structure. So every transformation of Iran which is not involving them is perceived as a delegitimization of revolutionary Iran. And given the fact that they are those elected in order to protect revolutionary Iran, means that this is an attack to the Sepapas Iran and to the revolutionary apparatus of the government. So it's an ambiguous position. And if they're set outside of the negotiation, this is always a perception that is shared among this group. So the leader is in the middle of this very chaotic and conflictual system, and it's becoming more and more difficult for him to handle the domestic evolution in these terms. And with respect to the Iran-US relations, I think that one thing that is basically shared by both generations is a general diffuse mistrust of the US. It's a mistrust based on several different factors. Some of these factors are basically conspiracy theories or ideas which have been conceived within the ranks of the first generation, which have no foreign experience, no real capacity of understanding. Sometimes it's funny for us to see how strong still is the stereotypes of the consideration of the West in Iran, the idea of Great Britain as the master of every Western powers, of things like that, which seems funny, but is still diffused and still alimenting ideas and positions in interpreting foreign policy. And of course, this is interesting also the United States. But more in general, I think that most of the Iranians in both generations, at least involved in power, perceive the U.S. as a natural ally which is always difficult to engage with. I think it's clear that the Iranians are willing to negotiate with Iran, and I think it's clear that within the Iranian part they are negotiating with the U.S. and not with the P5+1. This negotiation is not with the Europeans and the Russians and the Chinese, but is with the Americans, and this is what they are willing to achieve. But on the other side, they don't trust the U.S. administrative machine. They think that, well, that Obama is animated by good intentions, but still there is an apparatus on the back which is always playing against Iran. So this idea of the fact that the apparatus of the US is not willing to deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran, so always willing to pursue the regime change strategy with them, is dominating in terms of perception of what it could be the relationship with the US. So this is alimenting a continuous mistrust. And this continuous mistrust have been confirmed on the Iranian side, at least by the failures of these several opportunities since 2001 basically emerged in terms of possibilities of, if not rapprochement, at least a less critical dialogue with the US. I remember, for example, I was in a meeting in Tehran in February 2002, and I remember when the speech of the famous Axis of Evil speech was broadcasted. It was really a shock in Tehran. There was a shock in Tehran. They basically said, we are cooperating almost everywhere. We are helping them in Afghanistan. We are cooperating against the Taliban. We are cooperating in every possible political issues in the region, and we've been betrayed by, we've been put in the same row with the North Koreans and Saddam. And this is one of the several events which have, from the Iranian point of view, probably confirmed their negative perception. The fact that whatever you can offer to the Americans, that they are never ready to deliver. So they don't want to deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. They only want to achieve specific goals like the nuclear one or the agreement with the P5+1, just in order to stop selective issues of interest of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they said this, if we agree with this, they will ask then to work on human rights, and we will be put in a very difficult condition. Then they will work on the missile issue, and we will be put in another very difficult condition. So this is the perception from the Iranian side. They are not willing to re-establish political, diplomatic, or whatever relations. They are simply willing to achieve results which are in the benefit of the West. And of course, it's a reading which is partial. It's a reading which is not complete. But it's difficult to convince the Iranians that they're wrong several times. It's difficult to give them arguments to change their opinions. And this is alimented, just to conclude this this part, is alimented by this incapacity of the West of selecting and promoting a broader dialogue with Iranians. This idea that we only select those we like and we transform the other into terrorists or into elements which are unacceptable at the table or within a dialogue is alimenting a conflict on the back, which is not helping at all. So that's the position where we are at the moment, in my opinion. In practical terms, there's a lot of enthusiasm in Iran for the negotiations. I think that Rouhani and Zarif are enthusiastic about the possibilities of achieving a result. They're always basically selling the fact that a result is behind the corner, that it's just because of technicalities that we haven't signed an agreement in November, that it's only a matter of technical things that could be solved easily in these 7 months. But the reality is different. The reality is that there's a lot of people pushing against this agreement. There's a lot of people which is trying to put Iran also domestically in a condition which could be difficult to sustain in front of the European and American counterparts during the negotiations. And so there will be, for sure, an attempt to block this from an internal point of view. So it's difficult to assess how strong is the capacity of these people to stop the process. It's difficult to assess, but for sure there will be an attempt, and I think that is visible at the moment. So giving opportunities, giving an option also for reconciliation at the domestic level could be one of the goals that we should try to, not to be involved with, of course, because it's a domestic issue, but we could try to help, not at least alimenting from outside. And this, I think, it will be one of the major challenge in the coming month, that of understanding which are the real ground for possibilities in these negotiations. I don't think that what we are expecting is honestly possible at the moment. So I think that on both sides there will be a reductions in terms of capacity, and so try to see what will be at the end the outcome and July 1st, in order to sign, as the Iranians said, basically at least a piece of paper which could be presented at the domestic level in order to demonstrate that there was a success, that there was a capacity of this government to change things. For the rest, we will follow the events, and we will probably assist to a gradual transformation of the country. But, and with this I will conclude, I think that we are already dealing with a new Iran, with a country which is completely different from at least most of the ideas that we have in the West, and it's a completely different structure from the one that we think is representing revolutionary Iran. It's already a new system. It's already a new generation dominating the vast majority of the key segments of the institutions and of the relevant elements of the country. So we are already dealing with that part. So excluding that part from our relation, our negotiation, could be risky for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to open the floor to your questions. No comments, please. We just take questions. Let me ask you the first question. In your opinion, does public opinion matter in Iran, and how much does it count? Because if we assume that public opinion in Iran would like to see a deal, would like to see the end of isolation of Iran, would like to see the lifting of sanctions, and we also know that there is a government, there is a negotiating team that wants a deal. There is a supreme leader who, as you said, is skeptic, but nevertheless he has supported the negotiating team. And then there is that whole group of people you mentioned that are opposing it. So if public opinion matters, then why can't the government get a deal?
I think it's very interesting, this question, because I think that it's not only matters, but it's becoming one of the most relevant issues in Iran. So the public opinion is becoming extremely relevant. It's something which is scaring most of those in the political apparatus, because for the first time, I think there is a concrete perception of how relevant it is and how risky it could be not listening to the voice of those composing the Iranian society. I think it's clearly visible also in the position of the leader. The events of 2009 was a shock for the leader and for most of those composing the inner circle of the Islamic Republic. And in these last presidential election, I think it was clear how strong was the message from the leader of not having anymore these kind of problems. So it should have been conducted in a way that no problem should have emerged from immediately after the elections. And it was clear how he was trying to defend the possibility of several group of candidates to participate, with only one exception, of course, those of Mustafa. But with Mossavi, it's a different issue. It's, I think that my personal opinion, it's more a personal problem of the leader rather than a political problem. The sets of events which have alimented this critical relations with Mossavi. It's a personal problem which is rooted in the first years of the Islamic Republic, and it's dividing them because of other reasons which are far from politics. And I think that it's visible also how much is, how strong is the position of the public opinion in the fact that, as you mentioned, the leader is supporting the dialogue. But he's supporting the dialogue, telling clearly to Rouhani, I don't trust the Americans. I don't think that you will get any result from this agreement, from this process, but I will sustain your position. Because this is the position which is behind your vote, behind the people who have voted for you, and which is supporting your government. So I trust you. I will protect your action from all the ultra radical or whatever against this process. But I don't trust the other part. So I don't think that you will get any result from this. And this is interesting in the way we can interpret the domestic Iranian politics.
Okay, a follow-up to that. In case there is no deal, who will take the blame? The government, the negotiating team, or the supreme leader and the people who have been objecting to it? Let's say that radical group that was formed and called themselves We Are Concerned. Who is going, somebody has to be blamed at the end of the day.
I think that Rouhani is already repositioning himself in this phase, so is not certainly willing to be the one paying for a failure. And well, probably the real blame will be on the counterpart. So it would be because of the US, because of the West in general. And from a political point of view, I fear that Zarif could be one of the victims in the near future of paying the price for the failure. And it's well, it's difficult to predict what will happen in so there are several options that we have on in the horizon. A complete failure, so no agreement at all, and this will be probably extremely negative in terms of consequences. So probably it will be not enough having only Zarif on paying for the price. So there will be probably a more harsh consequence at the domestic level, or a partial agreement. So not what we are dreaming about, but something different, or something which could be presented at least as a result from Rouhani. And this will have, of course, a different. There will be a different outcome in terms of being blamed for this. So it depends on what we'll get in July.
Okay. Thank you. Barbara, and then Patrick, and then we move to this side. Barbara Slavin, can you please get the mic here? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barbara Slavin from the Atlantic Council. Everywhere I go, people try to put me on the spot and say, what are the odds of getting some sort of deal in the next 6 months? So I'm going to put you on the spot. What are the odds of getting some sort of deal, framework by March, or anything by the end of June? Thanks.
Patrick, why don't you ask your question too, because the mic is there, and then please.
Patrick Clausen from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Could you discuss perceptions about the oil price decline? What are its causes, what impact it's expected to have on Iran, and what effect, if any, it will have on Iran's stance in nuclear talks?
Thank you. So Barbara first, and then Patrick.
Well, very tough question. Well, there are several difficulties, and I think that the most relevant one will be that of convincing part of the industrial apparatus or the economic apparatus that there is a benefit for them. And it's difficult to convince that part of the system in this moment with the cards that we have on the table, because in the way we're working with negotiation, there will be, or at least there is the risk of a concrete negative effect for most of their interest in the country. So this will be probably the most relevant thing that we will have to face in the next 6 months. The capacity of these people of being convinced, or at least to be involved into a process. And I don't think that there is any real possibility at the moment. I'm honestly negative. Or at least probably I'm influenced from what I've heard domestically, the fact that there is a denial of possibility in this sense, and it's the fact that in a certain sense it seems the position of some people within the Egyptian military apparatus. Whatever could represent a change is taken as immediately as a sort of threat for their interest, and I fear that this is the same position that we are facing in that part of the apparatus. On the other side, there are the issues related to security. It's I don't know honestly what to expect from this strange form of cooperation that we have with the Iranians on the ground in Iraq and in Syria, and so it will be probably also linked to this, the kind of trust that we will be able to reach or to create with them on the ground. So I have to confess, it's really difficult for me to
40, 60, 30. Price of oil.
So,
Price of oil. How much has it affected?
well, so just to really, it's really embarrassing because it's something which is I have to admit it's beyond my capacity of analysis. Understanding this the level of the odds that we'll have to face. I can perceive that there is a general opposition to this inside. I think that they will try to do their best in order to stop. It is difficult to qualify and quantify where and when this will happen during the process. And there are several factors which are, like the oil price, to come to the following question, which are affecting this issue. So it's not only security, it's not only domestic politics. There's a lot of factors which are affecting the domestic pictures from outside. The oil price it's another issue which is difficult to assess because of course, there's no doubt that these last sanctions have hit Iran severely, especially the sanctions which have interested the banking system, create a real problem in Iran. And for the first time in the last 20 years, I think a real effect of the sanctions visible on the ground, on the everyday's life for the Iranians and for those willing to maintain their relations with the external world and things like that. So how this will be affected by the oil price? I think that there will be, of course, an impact. But on the other side, the Iranians are proud always of saying we have survived during the 8 years of the Iran-Iraq oil war with an oil price that for us was basically $4 per barrel in terms of comparison. So we will be able to survive even below the value of $40 per barrel. It was a completely different phase of in Iran. It was a completely different society. It was a completely different environment, the one where they survived with that prices. So it's difficult to see or to understand if they'll be able to survive also in this phase with all the issues that the request of this society, with what they have promised to the society, with all the programs that they have in order to transform the economy, to empower certain sectors, to solve certain problems. I think that there will be an impact for sure. I fear that there will be an impact not only for Iran, but for most of the other regional countries. So the only thing that I can say is that probably Iran is more able than others to survive to this impact. I fear that the impact of this decline in prices will have a disastrous effect in most of the other regional countries. And so if the target, if the specific target is Iran, probably there will be many others following before the Islamic Republic.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Phil Schrafer, retired international healthcare worker. I have a sort of two-part question about the ISIL, Islamic Republic. First part is how is Iran combating ISIL through Hezbollah? Is there any possible U.S. military and Iranian cooperation? Second part, how are the generations reacting to the Islamic Republic? Thank you.
There is a question from the overflow, but that also, so I might as well give it to you now. I mean, how would the current support that Iran is giving to Hezbollah and Hamas and these various groups, Houthis in Yemen and so on, affect eventually the relation with the U.S.?
Okay.
So if you can combine these two questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, with respect to ISIL, well, in general terms, I think that ISIL is not perceived in Iran as a direct threat to the Islamic Republic. It is perceived as a threat to the region and to some of their allies in the region, but not as a threat, as a specific threat for the Islamic Republic. And well, Iran is proud of repeating that they are probably the only real forces with boots on the ground fighting ISIL, and they repeat day after day that without their intervention, 24 hours after the invasion, Baghdad would have been probably fallen in the hands of the ISIL forces. So they consider themselves as the only one basically playing a real role against them. I don't think that the perception of the role of the Kurds is taken into a proper consideration in Iran. And on the other side, the official position of the government is that of denying any form of cooperation with the U.S. It's difficult to say what's happening on the ground, in the sense that it's at least the effect of what we have seen seems that of a cooperation. And there is also the role of General Soleimani, which is becoming one of the most popular figure, and not only in the region but also in the West. I don't remember how many cover he had in Europe and the US in the last month, and is actively portraying this image of someone who is doing something and on the ground with the logic on the ground, which is not exactly the one represented by the government. So what is basically the idea that most of the Iranians has is that Soleimani is sending a message. He's sending a message not only to the domestic political circles but also to the external actors involved in the fight on ISIS. We are the one which are handling this. So it's not the government. It's something which is handled by us and only by us. And I think that they are quite effective in what they're doing. I think that there are concrete results in the fight against ISIL on the ground. One of the biggest problems on the Iranian side is not recognizing the causes of this, so not recognizing that the biggest part of this problem has been created by the government of al-Maliki, and not considering the fact that promoting this idea of talking about inclusion but doing nothing in order to include the Sunni component in the political and social life of Iraq will simply repeat again and again this problem in the future. So this is something that have not been properly perceived probably in Iran. The fact that the roots of this problem, it's involving also the Iranian role in the country, and the perception that they have of the Shia government in Baghdad. On the other side, the Iranians seems to be quite aware of the fact that the ISIL threat is a threat. It's a different threat from, with respect to the others that they have in Syria. It's mostly based on Iraqi forces, and they know that it was not really an invasion rather than a sort of welcome in most of the country. And so they know that it will be difficult to challenge ISIS in some of the western areas of the country, because these forces are indigenous. These forces are rooted in that part of the country. They are representing interests which are considered vital in the region. And so there is a popular support for most of these forces in some areas where ISIL is still quite strong. So it would have been, it had been easy to fight ISIS in certain central areas of Iraq, but it will be tough to remove ISIL from other areas dominated by Sunni communities, and this is clear in Tehran. And with respect to Syria, on the other side, which is a problem which is probably not detached from an Iranian point of view, well, Syria, as we said before, is considered as a manufactured crisis. So it was an attack to Iran and an attack to this axis of resistance, as it is called, in the region. So that's why it is justified, the intervention of Hezbollah in Syria. It is considered a legitimate answer to the fact that there were foreign fighters coming in Syria, and of course, according to the Iranian vision, these foreign forces are the product of the Saudi and Emirate vision of the fight. So it's justified, the fact of having Hezbollah forces there. Iran tried not to be involved or at least visibly involved as an occupation force or as an active military force in Syria. But this is a very ambiguous issue, because if you look, for example, at the domestic press, they always deny the fact that they are involved in Syria, but every day there are ceremonies and funerals in Beit Zaraf, or the Commander X or the Colonel Epsilon, the body came back from Syria, so there are official ceremonies of those fighters coming back from the ground. So it's clear that there is a participation, which is not even denied by the government. But in official terms, they are simply involved with trainers, with consultants, and with these kind of things. It's not clear what's happening in terms of Air Force, so was their real role in participating in the bombing, but it's clear that there is a direct interest, and Iran is considering Syria in these terms as a sort of extension of its own territory. So an attack to Syria, it's an attack to Iran in a certain sense. And they are quite enthusiastic about the idea of what could be the future, because from an Iranian perspective, the Syrian crisis, it's basically evolving in their favor. Bashar al-Assad is regaining control in some of the key areas of, for example, of Aleppo and other important villages. So they are basically opposing even the de Mistura plan for the ceasefire, because they said you arrive with a plan for the ceasefire in the moment when Bashar al-Assad is regaining control of the territory. And on the other side, in terms of dealing with the opposition, it's clear that the Free Syrian Army is a fake opposition force. It's the capacity of the Free Syrian Army, it's really near to zero. And so the only real opposition forces which are on the ground are that of the jihadists, like Jabhat al-Nusra and other groups, and of the ISIL on the other side, which are quite conflictual among themselves. and of course are unacceptable in terms of negotiation from the other side. So the position of Iran is sooner or later you will be forced to accept the fact that not only Bashar al-Assad is a counterpart, but also Iran is a counterpart to the negotiations. They're probably too optimistic at the moment, but this is the perception for the medium term at least, that of admitting the fact that it was a total failure, that it was impossible to control the country without involving the Islamic Republic and the Bashar al-Assad government. And I think it's interesting the position of Hezbollah in this, which is in the middle and playing a role which is becoming controversial in the sense that even Bashar al-Assad seems to be oriented in accepting the status quo as it is today, demonstrating that there's no real opposition to deal with. So or you deal with us or you deal with them. And them are the jihadists, the ISIS, and the others. So Hezbollah seems to be really not happy to accept the idea of a ceasefire or of accepting the status quo in certain areas. They feel the threats on Lebanon, they feel the threats on their own interest in the region, and so even this position is hurting their strategic vision of what could happen after an agreement or after a non-agreement and in keeping the status quo in the region. I think that the alliance is still solid, still valid. It will be probably changing in the future. This event will have an effect, will have an impact in the way on each of the actors, these axis of the resistance, or the axis of alliance, whatever it is, will be considered. So that there will be a change in the near future. But at the moment, the perception, I think, is quite positive. And so the perception from the Iranian side is not that of losing the battle on the ground. And on the other side, they perceive themselves as the unavoidable counterpart. So Iran, it's like it or not, from an Iranian position, is the one that you cannot ignore in this moment. And so in general terms, I think it's a positive consideration. I don't think that there is any real chance for open cooperation with the West or with the US in particular, because of political reason, domestic political reason. And but tactically on the ground, I think that the situation is a little bit different on this.
Thank you. My apologies to those who have questions. We have run out of time. Please join me in thanking you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.